Lecture 22, Jains, Sikhs, and Baha'is.
In the previous lectures, we've covered the religious traditions of well over 70% of the world's population. There are around 2 billion Christians, 1.5 billion Muslims, 1 billion Hindus, and well over 1 billion people who practice one religion among, or some combination of, Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, Shinto, Chinese folk religions, and shamanism. In cultivating religious literacy, we certainly want to cover the most widely practiced religions. However, we must also pay attention to the smaller religions. For one thing, every religious tradition has elements that are fascinating and worthy of reflection. And for another thing, a religion with a smaller number of adherents can have a disproportionately large impact on the cultures and societies of which it is a part. In this lecture, we'll focus on 3 religions that were founded in 3 different periods. The Jain tradition, from around 2,500 years ago, the Sikh tradition, around 500 years ago, and the Baha'i tradition, which was founded a little over 150 years ago. We'll also look at some 20th century examples that show us how new religions are arising all the time, and how some endure and gain a large following. If you ever travel to India, you might see monks clad in plain white robes, or sometimes naked, who are wearing a white mask over their mouths and sweeping a broom in front of them as they walk. These monks are part of a tradition that has what could be considered the most thoroughgoing commitment to nonviolence of any in the world, the Jain tradition. There are between 4.5 and 6 million Jains in the world. The majority lives in India, but there are growing immigrant communities in North America, Europe, Australia, and East Asia. In some cases, such as in my home state of Minnesota, the Jain community participates in the rituals at the Hindu temple. In fact, Jain pujas, the rituals, share many features with Hindu pujas. Jainism began in India around the 6th century BCE, about the same period that Buddhism began. Both traditions were seen as renunciate movements that rejected much of the Vedic tradition. The founder of the tradition is known as Mahavira, the great hero, and he's understood to be the 24th and last in a line of great enlightened teachers known as Tirthankaras, ford makers, who showed humanity the path of liberation. These are people who undertook disciplined practices and austerities in order to overcome their desires and attain mastery over their bodies and minds. Because they conquered their passions and egos, conquered themselves, they're called Jinas, or conquerors. And from this term, we get the name of the Jain tradition. A Jain text states, "Difficult to conquer is oneself, but when that is conquered, everything is conquered." The Tirthankaras are considered heroic because they achieved liberation, the goal to which all human beings aspire, and because they taught the path for the benefit of all suffering beings. But they're not considered gods. The Jain tradition rejects the notion of a supreme creator God, and early texts contained philosophical arguments for atheism. However, the kind of religious syncretism that we've encountered many times already is also apparent among Jains. Many Jain laypeople also worship Hindu deities or local spirits. But the main representations in Jain temples are statues of the Tirthankaras, who are often portrayed standing or in seated meditation, naked, conveying strength and self-discipline. As far as the monks are concerned, the Jain tradition can be considered one of the most ascetically demanding practices in all of Asia. Mahavira is said to have wandered naked, ignoring all physical needs in an attempt to break his ties to the material world. He'd go for extended periods without sleep or food. When someone's initiated as a monk or nun in the Jain tradition, he or she is expected to remove all hair on the head, which is typical in Asia. However, the Jain ideal is for the initiate to pull out each strand of hair one by one. Well, today, many will shave most of the hair, but leave a small amount that's then pulled out but there are still some who follow the more difficult practice of pulling each strand out. The Jain commitment to non-harming, ahimsa, is one of their most important contributions to the culture of India and to the world. Jains believe that non-harming is the supreme path. Mahatma Gandhi was from Gujarat, which was a center of the Jain community, and he was deeply influenced by Jain thought. To understand the Jain concept of non-harming, we have to look at their understanding of the soul and of karma. Jains believe that each being has a jiva, a pure, eternal soul. And this truly means each and every being, from the most microscopic bug on up. This soul is reborn over and over again until it achieves liberation. For Jains, we live in a world surrounded by an endless number of suffering souls, each one of them worthy of compassion. For this reason, all Jains, monks, nuns, and laypeople are strict vegetarians. Many avoid eating root vegetables since digging these up and eating them will kill the plant and many small beings in the soil. It's better to eat fruits, vegetables, and leaves that when removed for food, leave the plant unharmed. Monks strive to avoid accidentally harming or consuming any being. Throughout their history, the Jains have built and run animal hospitals. In Delhi, there's a Jain hospital solely for birds. And there's an account of a Jain rat hospital having once existed, with 5,000 patients. The reason Jain monks wear this mask is to avoid accidentally breathing in any tiny beings. And they carry the whisk to brush off their seat before they sit and to sweep the ground in front of them when they walk to make sure they don't sit or step on any little beings. The souls of all beings in this material world are weighed down with karma, which Jains basically understand as a kind of material that binds the soul to the world. The soul itself is pure, and it cannot be stained, but it can be shackled and weighed down by karma. The Jain path aims to wipe away the karma and liberate the soul from bondage. All action results in karma, but immoral action, action that harms other beings, creates the worst karmic effects. The karma from good or neutral deeds disappears more quickly. So, one must avoid engaging in any harmful action, as that'll increase one's karma and prevent one from being liberated. One can avoid accumulating great amounts of karma by living in a non-violent way. But since any action creates at least some karma, how does one get rid of existing karma? This is where the austerities come in. Some of these involve atonement, meditation, and service to others, but some monks go further, believing that austerities such as extended fasting can cleanse one of karma. This leads to one of the most extraordinary practices in the Jain tradition, fasting until death. While it's not done frequently, it's considered a high form of practice by many Jains, and there are examples of Jain monks who've done this throughout history. The idea is this: when a Jain monk has cleansed himself of virtually all karma and is ready for liberation, he simply ceases all action. Any further action would just bring about more karma. He enters into meditation, stops eating, eventually achieving the liberation of the soul at the death of the body. Now, Jain lay people don't engage in these kinds of austerities, but they periodically undertake ritual fasts and meditation. A common Jain symbol is an open hand with a wheel in the center. The open hand represents nonviolence, and inside is the wheel of truth that cuts through the cycle of rebirth. There's often a word in the center of this wheel, which is ahimsa, non-harming. Sikhs make up only about 2% of the Indian population, but they're far more influential politically, economically, and culturally than their size would indicate. A large majority of the world's Sikhs live in India, most of them in the Punjab region in the northwest, the birthplace of the Sikh tradition. But there are also sizable Sikh communities living elsewhere. There are roughly 25 to 30 million Sikhs in the world. And here are some rough numbers. 12 to 13 million Sikhs live in the Punjab. They're around 60% of the population there. And 6 to 8 million in the rest of India. And over 2 million outside of India, with the UK, Canada, and the US each having between 6 and 800,000. The word Sikh means disciple, and it must be understood in relation to one of the most important concepts in the Sikh tradition, the Guru. The word is also found in Hinduism, where it refers to one's spiritual teacher and guide. But in the Sikh tradition, Guru means this and more. The Sikh tradition began with a line of 10 gurus who lived from 1469 to the last one in 1708. And these gurus are profoundly important in the shaping of the tradition. Collectively, they laid the foundation for the Sikh religion. If you visit Sikh holy sites, you'll often see an image that contains the faces of all 10 gurus, and there may be a chart with all of their names and the years in which they lived. I'll focus here on the founder, the first guru, Guru Nanak. Guru Nanak, who was born a Hindu in 1469, was a spiritual seeker who was drawn to both Hindu and Muslim holy people. He married and had 2 sons, and he always believed that the spiritual life was compatible with family life, which meant that renunciation and celibacy were not necessary. At the age of 30, he went to bathe in a river when he had a profound spiritual experience. According to tradition, he was called up to the presence of God. 3 days later, he reappeared and began to teach what he had learned. One of his most well-known utterances is, "God is neither Hindu nor Muslim, and the path that I follow is God's." Guru Nanak's path was one that emphasized the unity of all human beings, and he promoted equality rather than caste distinction, tolerance rather than religious division and bigotry. He journeyed through India accompanied by a Muslim musician, expressing his ideas through songs. And from the beginning to the present day, chanting and music have been fundamentally important in the Sikh tradition. He wrote in the accessible language of Punjabi, rather than a classical language like Sanskrit. And finally, he settled down in the Punjab and founded a community. He established traditions of communal worship and eating that still characterize Sikh practice today. Before he died in 1539, he appointed his successor, and for nearly 200 years, the Sikh community would be led by a guru. The Sikhs were sometimes tolerated or even supported by the Muslim rulers of the Mughal dynasty. But at other times, they faced severe persecution. 2 of the Sikh gurus were martyred, a part of their histories that the Sikhs keep firmly in their memories and as part of their sacred story. The 10th guru, Guru Gobind Singh, made a decision to end the line of human gurus and bestow authority on the sacred text, the Adi Granth, which is honorifically called the Guru Granth Sahib. It's considered the successor to the 10 gurus and is the living guru of the Sikhs. The text is composed of the writings of Sikh gurus along with Hindu and Muslim holy people, which shows the Sikh acceptance of truth from other traditions. These writings are understood to be the products of divine revelation. So the text has the supreme authority within the tradition. It's chanted at every important Sikh ritual or event. And the physical text itself is treated with deep devotion. The text is placed upon a raised platform, essentially its throne. It's covered with silken cloths. It's fanned with a whisk. And at the holiest site, the Golden Temple, it's carried each night on a palanquin to a resting place in another building in a procession, and then it's returned the following morning. In a sense, it's treated like royalty. In the presence of the Guru Granth Sahib, you must remove your shoes and cover your head. Devotees then bow before the text. The caretaker and chanter of the text is called a Granthi. There's no separate priesthood in the Sikh tradition. And any place with the text is considered a place of worship, a Gurdwara, meaning a gateway to the Guru. The Sikh religion is monotheistic and frequently proclaims the oneness of God. At the beginning of the Adi Granth is the fundamental mantra of the Sikh tradition, which presents the attributes of God. In fact, the very first word is a numeral, 1. The mantra is as follows: One God, the true name, Creator, without fear, without hate, beyond time, unborn, self-existent, made known by the Guru's grace. A common greeting among Sikhs is Sat Sri Akal, meaning the eternal God is the truth. God is generally referred to as Akal Purakh, which means timeless being, or Vaheguru, wondrous Guru. So now we can see the many meanings of Guru in the Sikh tradition. It can refer to the original 10 Gurus, the sacred text of the tradition, and to the ultimate Guru, the source of all wisdom, God. Sikhs see God as formless, and they do not approve of the worship of icons. For Sikhs, God is reached by inward practice, particularly a form of inner meditation that focuses on the divine name. Sikh meditation can be silent or can involve singing and chanting. For Sikhs, the reason that we fail to experience the connection with God is our self-centeredness, which blinds us to the divine reality. Sikhs believe that as long as we don't awaken to the divine, our souls will continue in the round of rebirth. When a person finally moves from self-centeredness to God or Guru-centeredness, worldly temptations are conquered, the cycle of rebirth ends, and liberation, understood as union with God, occurs. Sikh worship takes place in a gurdwara. The Sikh triangular flag, displaying a double-edged sword in the middle surrounded by a circle, with 2 curved swords on each side, often flies outside of the gurdwara. Sikhs remove their shoes upon entry, cover their heads, wash their hands, and sit on the floor, so that they're lower than the Guru Granth Sahib, which is elevated. The heart of the service is the recitation of prayers, which are chanted by the Granthi. This form of devotional singing, called kirtan, is accompanied by a harmonium and a drum. Both men and women can be Granthis, and the Sikh tradition emphasizes the equality of women. The holiest site for Sikhs is the Golden Temple in the city of Amritsar in the Punjab. The Golden Temple complex, completed in 1604, is awe-inspiring. The Golden Temple itself, glittering during the daytime and illuminated at night, sits in the middle of a large rectangular reservoir with only one path to it. A constant stream of worshippers lines up to enter into the temple, where the Guru Granth Sahib is chanted throughout the day. Sikhs and many others from around the world make a pilgrimage to the temple, where they circumambulate the temple, all the while listening to the chanting of the text played over speakers, and large screens display the text of the chanting in Punjabi, in Hindi, and English. One of the most remarkable practices of the Sikhs is the communal meal called the langar. This was established by Guru Nanak, who would invite all people, regardless of caste, gender, or religion, to eat together and then sing and worship together. Given the caste divisions are based on purity and impurity, which leads high caste Hindus to avoid eating with low caste Hindus, the langar is a way to undermine caste distinction and promote unity. The meal is given free to all who ask, and it's prepared and served by volunteers, an example of the Sikh emphasis on service to the community. I was fortunate enough to participate in the langar at the Golden Temple, and it was an amazing sight to behold. Thousands of pilgrims are fed each day in this huge hall, everyone sitting side by side on the floor. People carrying enormous buckets of vegetarian food, primarily lentils, Indian breads or rice, and vegetables, walk down the rows of people and scoop food into the plates. Behind the scenes, dozens of volunteers prepare the food, wash the dishes, and handle supplies. The langar stands as a powerful example of Sikh values. The Khalsa is a special order of Sikhs that in theory all observant Sikhs should aspire to join. It was founded by the 10th Guru, Guru Gobind Singh, who wanted to create an elite order that would require courage and a willingness to publicly identify as Sikh and defend the order from attack. In the initiation ceremony, water is poured into a bowl along with some sugar and stirred with a sword while hymns from the Adi Granth are recited. Initiates all drink from the same bowl, which is another way of displaying that caste distinctions are irrelevant. The water is called amrit, or nectar, and one can think of this ritual as a form of baptism, conferring a new identity. The initiates take a vow of loyalty to the order and its founding guru and his wife. In a sense, they become a family. All men take the name Singh, which means lion, and all women take the name Kaur, which means princess. The average age of Sikhs who join the Khalsa is in the early 20s, but some join even earlier. As members of the Khalsa, they all adopt 5 articles of faith, each of which starts with the letter K in Punjabi. Hence, they're known as the 5 Ks. The first is uncut hair, and a Khalsa Sikh is expected to let all body hair grow, as God intended it to grow. However, they distinguish themselves from people like Hindu renunciates who let the hair grow out in tangles by keeping it neatly combed. So the second item is a small wooden comb which is carried in the hair. The hair is gathered up into a turban, so male Khalsa Sikhs are distinguished by their turbans. The most common turban colors are saffron, dark blue, white, and black. Women sometimes wear turbans, but more often cover their heads with scarves. The third item is a simple circular bracelet. This bracelet is a symbol of the never-ending nature of God, no beginning, no end, and a reminder to use the hands within the bounds of the tradition with restraint. The fourth item is a pair of short pants that are worn under the clothes, both to ensure that the Sikh is always ready for action, some even wear them while bathing, and also to remind Sikhs of the importance of self-control. The final item is the kirpan, a small ceremonial blade that shows that the Sikh is ready to defend the innocent at all times. And there's a strong emphasis on using the kirpan only for defensive purposes. As Sikhs cannot carry kirpans on airplanes, some might wear a symbolic pin with a picture of a kirpan on it until they can don their kirpan again. Some Sikhs have yearned for a separate nation for Sikhs, which they call Khalistan. And they have at times taken political or military action to pursue this goal. In 1984, one such group entrenched themselves in the Golden Temple. The Indian government, led by Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, sent in troops, resulting in a violent confrontation that left many Sikhs dead. Both the loss of life and the sense that their most sacred site had been violated angered Sikhs. The bullet holes from that event are still visible on the Golden Temple grounds. In retaliation for this, one of Indira Gandhi's Sikh bodyguards assassinated her, leading to widespread violence against Sikhs across India. The raid on the Golden Temple is still very much present in the minds of Sikhs. Over time, some non-Indians have chosen to become Sikhs. One of the most famous orders of non-Indian Sikhs is known as the Healthy, Happy, Holy Organization, 3HO, formed in 1971 by Yogi Bhajan. This movement attracted many Americans, most of them Caucasian, who are known as Gora, or white Sikhs. They follow the Khalsa code, and both men and women wear turbans and white clothes. The Baha'i faith emerged in Persia from Shia Islam, although it was considered a distinct religion very early on. The tradition has its origins with Sayyid Ali Muhammad, who in 1844 claimed to be the Bab, which is Arabic for gate or doorway, because he announced that a future messenger of God would be sent, him whom God shall make manifest. He was strongly opposed by the Shia religious authorities who saw him as an apostate, and he was executed in 1850 at the age of 30. In 1852, one of his followers, known as Baha'u'llah, Splendor of God, claimed to have a mystical experience while in prison, during which he realized that he was the one whose appearance had been foretold by the Bab. Baha'is, meaning followers of Baha'u'llah, see him as a prophet of God. Now, given Islam's emphasis on Muhammad as the final prophet, it's no surprise that Muslim authorities considered Baha'is heretical. From this earliest period to the present day, Baha'is have been persecuted in many Muslim countries, especially Iran. One of the central teachings in the Baha'i faith is that God sends prophets and messengers to humanity on an ongoing basis. It's a doctrine of continuous prophecy without end. Baha'is are monotheists who accept numerous prophets from other religious traditions, including Krishna, Buddha, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. The Baha'i faith is one that emphasizes the unity of all humanity, and it has a pluralistic theology that sees truth in many traditions. They see the continuous revelations from God as leading humanity in a direction of ongoing spiritual evolution. A key teaching of the Baha'i faith is unity, the unity of God, of the human race, and of all religions. Each religion has its truth. All are genuine stages in the revelation of God's will to humanity. Baha'u'llah said, "The earth is but one country, and mankind its citizens." The notion of unity gives rise to a strong Baha'i commitment to promote world peace. Some of the main Baha'i principles include the elimination of all forms of prejudice, equality between men and women, universal education, and harmony between science and religion, and between nature and technology. Currently, there are approximately 5 to 7 million Baha'is in the world. While this makes it a fairly small religion in terms of population, it's one of the fastest growing and most widespread religions in the world, with members in over 220 countries. There are between 150 and 170,000 Baha'is in the United States. Much of Baha'i worship happens in homes or private spaces. There's no clergy in the Baha'i faith. Rather, it's administered by a combination of elected councils and appointed advisors. Members assemble every 19 days for feasting, community, and worship. The Baha'i calendar consists of 19 months of 19 days each, and it's adjusted to the solar year. The organizational focus is on local Baha'i communities, which are sustained by these regular gatherings. Baha'is observe 11 holy days, including days associated with the lives of Baha'u'llah and the Bab, as well as the Baha'i New Year on March 21st. Baha'is engage in prayer and meditation, they abstain from alcohol and gambling, and they fast from sunrise to sunset for 19 consecutive days from March 2nd to March 20th each year. One of the main symbols of the Baha'i faith is a 9-pointed star. The number 9 is seen as symbolizing perfection and fulfillment. The word Baha itself, meaning the glorious, is known as the greatest name, a reference to Baha'u'llah, and is often depicted in calligraphy. And the numerical value of this word is 9, another reason for the number's importance. There are currently 7 Baha'i houses of worship in the world, all in different continents. These temples are open to all people, regardless of religion, for personal prayer and meditation. There are no rituals or sermons given, and the scriptures of the Baha'i faith, as well as other traditions, can be read or recited inside. The houses of worship are built as 9-sided structures, and some of these buildings are architectural marvels. The house of worship in the United States is in Wilmette, Illinois. It's not far from where I grew up, and it's a striking building. And I recently saw the house of worship in New Delhi, which is shaped like a lotus flower and is a building of stunning beauty. In this lecture and throughout the course, we see that new religions are continuously emerging. And while we call them new religions, they always are in some ways connected with and shaped by older traditions. This process has continued into the 20th and 21st centuries. In East Asia, for example, new religions have attracted millions of followers. For instance, Soka Gakkai, a form of Buddhism that focuses on the Lotus Sutra, was founded in 1930 and now claims around 12 million members worldwide. While it is new, it's based on the teachings of 13th century Buddhist teacher Nichiren, who emphasized the practice of chanting the title of the Lotus Sutra, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. As another example, Falun Gong, a spiritual practice that draws on elements of Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism, as well as the physical movements that cultivate qi, was founded in 1992 in China. And by the end of the 1990s, it had tens of millions of practitioners. So it drew on China's ancient traditions, but it brought them together in a new way. Tensions with the Chinese government resulted in Falun Gong being banned. There's been a severe crackdown on practitioners. The fact that millions continue to practice in secret, and that the practice has spread to countries around the world, shows that new religious practices and organizations will continue to draw spiritual seekers. Unlike Falun Gong practitioners in China, members of any religion in the United States are free to practice their faith without fear of a government ban or crackdown. But there are limits to religious freedom, of course. In the next lecture, we look at how we adjudicate conflicts involving religion in the United States. We'll explore the topic of religion and the law and examine some fascinating and controversial cases.